And a happy hump day to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Still not much going on for your short-term weather, but as we head into the weekend and especially next week, we do have some talking points. So we'll probably focus a little bit more on that. But first things first, let's go ahead and take a look at your headlines. It's still a story of some warm afternoons, even some above average high temperatures starting this afternoon, but we will be holding on to the chilly starts. Not necessarily as chilly as we started out this morning, but nonetheless, temperatures in the 40s are going to be a little bit chilly. And we do say chilly right now because when I talk about what's in store for next week, that's where we're going to get more so into the cold term. And yes, we are expecting some pretty cold weather as we do head into next week. And it's really just courtesy of a couple frontal boundaries that will bring us some rain chances as we go throughout the weekend. So that's your last headline. Small rain chances. We'll go over what the anticipated rainfall totals are and what times you should expect for some rain to crowd maybe in the forecast in terms of outdoor plan's sake as we head throughout the course of Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. So it's been a story of not completely clear and blue skies. We do have some higher level clouds that are lingering in the forecast this morning. It looks like Willie and the Wasp game still quite active. I did notice yesterday on my walk with Aspen, there are lots of wasp and yellow jackets out on the grass. Maybe they're enjoying some of these warmer afternoons that we continue to have because typically the summer and kind of into the early fall are the times that those are out more frequently, but I'll have to do some more research on that. Taking a look around the quad, we do see plenty of the blue color in the sky, but you can see higher level clouds, mainly farther to the north it looks like, because downtown Macon has the most that we can see in the form of cloud coverage, and it's over on the left side of your screen at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. But still a forecast dominated by sunshine. Your morning low temperatures, we had probably 4 or 5 areas that dipped down into the 30s this morning. Eastman and Dublin were the lowest at 36 degrees. So we've seen a temperature increase of over 30 degrees in most areas already, actually into the 70s up here in Macon, 70 degrees down in Vidalia and Rochelle, 71 at the warmest in Cordele, but most of you, temperatures right here at the 11 a.m. hour, somewhere in the mid 60s into the upper 60s. We do have a few outliers, like say 62 over in Wrightsville. I imagine if we stayed on this graphic for about a couple more minutes, that number would update to somewhere in the upper half of the 60 degrees. So now taking a look at your temperatures, widespread green, not really seeing any shades of that blue color that we have been getting a glimpse of as of recently. The very calm weather stretch has led to a steady warming trend across the eastern United States. Warmest temperature that we can find, I believe that goes down to Orlando, sitting at 79 degrees, just shy of the 80-degree mark. Areas over in Texas like Austin are expected to creep into the mid and upper 80s as you go into the next couple of afternoons. That is definitely giving you a last-minute taste of summer, something that you should not be feeling in the month of November, in my personal opinion. But Mother Nature knows no boundaries when it does come to these temperature swings this time of year. So widespread 60s, 70 and 71 degrees here in central Georgia. That doesn't quite get close to all of our neighbors down along the Gulf Coast. Even San Angelo, Texas, warmer than we are here in central Georgia at the 11 a.m. hour. Your dew point temperatures, a bit of an increase from what we saw this morning. We had some numbers that were widespread in the 40s. Actually, some very faint areas of light green popping up on this graphic. We are looking at a steady increase in the moisture content as we go day by day over the course of the back half of this work week. And you can see farther down to the south, a bit more of a humid environment, but we're still kind of picking at straws. No areas of that dark green, that swampy humidity, and I think it's mainly courtesy of the southerly component of the winds that we continue to have. Right now they are mainly calm, but we are seeing a breeze of maybe 7 to 9 miles per hour in areas like Dublin and Cochrane. No widespread blue or widespread yellow, but as of the last couple of days, these locations and these plots have not necessarily been lining up with what the wind speeds are per se, but I do expect a breeze steady about 5 to 10 miles per hour throughout today. We're going to continue to see these winds come in from a southerly component for the next couple of hours and then have more of a westerly direction as we settle in to the late afternoon and evening hours today. So let's talk some numbers. Uneventful weather stretch means we focus on those temperatures, really just continuing to feel like two different seasons. 38 degrees, that's what we started out at yesterday morning in Macon, which was 8 under par of 46 degrees. That's your average low this time of year. So I know the 40s are mighty chilly, but that's getting to normal for this time of year. But we were right on par for your afternoon high temperature. 73 is what we hit yesterday, 73 your average high temperature. Haven't seen any of those upper 80s like I was talking about that are going to occur over into Texas later on this week. 87 for a high temperature. That did actually happen back in 1961. Your record low set back in 2006 of 26 degrees. So not seeing any of those values that have gotten quite below freezing or into the 20s, but that could very well be a possibility heading into next week. No precipitation, your departure of rain just over 2 1/4 of an inch of rain, above where we should be at this point in the calendar year. So that very wet month of August continues to keep that number with a plus in front of it as we go into this very dry stretch at the end of the year. Sunrise yesterday, 6:55 in the morning. Remember that time change happened this past weekend, so the sunrise got an hour earlier, but the sunset, it was already setting pretty early, but it got even an hour earlier. Now sets at 5:41 p.m. That was the sunset yesterday. I would anticipate the sunset to maybe creep towards the 5:40 hour as we go into this afternoon and evening. So your meteogram, high temperatures peaking at 77 degrees at 3 and 4 o'clock. After that, we approach sunset time, sometime between the 5 and the 6 p.m. hour. Temperatures begin their drop back down into the 60s. Going to be a bit of a chilly atmosphere for those evening plans, but I still think it's going to be mighty pleasant. At least those numbers have a ways to go before they hit their morning low tomorrow morning. 77 for a high temperature, so now 5 degrees above average for this time of year as your average high temperature has ticked down a degree. So after the cold start, going to be warm later today. It's already feeling pretty pleasant and borderline warm, and that's because of this warming trend. We continue to have crystal clear and sunny skies. I know we have those higher level clouds, but like I said, not doing a good job of blocking your sunshine. It is leading to a temperature increase of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40 degrees from where we start out the morning and into what we peak at in the afternoon. A west-southwesterly breeze about 5 to 10 miles per hour. Remember, those winds have a bit of a southerly component to them right now coming out of the south. They're going to have more of a westerly component as we head into this afternoon. Here's your satellite and radar picture at the 11 a.m. hour. A few higher level clouds farther to the north, just like we got a good image of on the satellite and radar, or excuse me, on the quad view of all of our sky cams. So sometimes your eyes are the best tools to utilize when it does come to weather. We did see a couple of high level clouds up here in Macon, not so much farther down to the south. That told me that there's some thin and high level cirrus clouds that are farther to the north, mainly between Macon and Atlanta right now. Otherwise, it's a very quiet story. That continues to be the highlight of your forecast down here in the southeast. And Future View is going to show you that, yes, this will be the case through not only today, not only tomorrow, but also lingering into Friday. It looks like I forgot to throw a pause point on there. Not much to write home about on Friday, but we will start to have some scattered showers and maybe even a couple of storms that are back into Alabama. Those are going to creep over into our neck of the woods, and right now the timing is looking like it's going to be early in the morning on Saturday. You'll see the long-range models have a bit of a disagreement with this, but overall I think you should plan on most of the first half of your Saturday kind of being that dreary forecast. We really don't even see much in the way of cloud cover as we go into the nighttime hours, but as that builds in during that overnight time frame for the early morning hours, that is going to cause an increase with your morning low temperatures. I wanted to turn your attention to this. This doesn't really pertain to us, of course. You don't see any of these shades of green or yellow over central Georgia, but there is a severe weather risk courtesy of this weather system that will be moving in here sometime on Saturday, but it is sprouting a severe weather risk back up in northern Alabama, northeast Mississippi, portions of central Tennessee, up into Kentucky, where there's even a level 2 out of 5 risk. Now, this is a graphic we have not showed a lot as of recently. I'm just showing you that this frontal boundary that will approach does have the potential for some severe weather right outside of our neck of the woods, but the good news is it looks to make its push into central Georgia during a cooler portion of the day, which will be that overnight time frame from Friday into early Saturday morning. Temperatures being a little bit cooler won't lead to as much of a severe weather risk as, say, areas that will see the impacts of this frontal boundary right there in peak afternoon time on Friday. That's when the temperatures will be somewhere in the mid to upper 70s. That's why those areas have a severe weather risk, and we don't see that extended for central Georgia, but we're also not quite in the range for the day 3 outlook as of yet. So over the next 3 days, what should you expect? Still chilly mornings and some pleasantly warm afternoons. And these afternoons, they do seem a bit too warm when you compare it to average for this time of year. But if we're talking about upper 70s being some warm temperatures, I think we know it's been a very pleasant stretch of some fall-like weather. 77 for a high today, up to 78 on both Thursday and into your Friday. Your morning low temperatures are finally getting on board with the warming trend. 44 as you start out Thursday morning, 46 as you start out Friday morning, and then we have that 10% chance of rain for late Friday night. I went with a 10% chance of rain, even though the timing is looking more so like early on Saturday morning, just to cover some fluctuation with the models. We could see this front move in a little bit quicker, and actually just given the latest timing of it, I do anticipate maybe some rain chances during that overnight time frame, but still the bulk of the rain is looking to come as we go into Saturday morning. So your morning low temperatures already just seeing that warming trend day by day throughout the next 3 days. But then we see a very big bump up. How about 12 degrees of a bump up as we start out Saturday morning? That's going to be because of the increased cloud cover. Now, Future View wasn't really saying that we'd have that cloud cover present until really early on Saturday morning. The later the cloud cover comes in, the lower that number will drop. But if we keep the cloud cover present during those overnight hours, it is going to slow the cool down. But still, you should expect some above average morning low temperatures as you walk outside on Saturday. And then we will continue with the above average trend as we roll into Sunday. For your afternoon high temperatures, not really too much to talk about. They continue to be in the upper edge of the 70s, right on the cusp of the 80-degree mark as we roll into the weekend, but 74 degrees for a high temperature on Sunday. Starting to see signs of maybe a temperature decrease. You're going to be pretty shocked at what some of the numbers are as we head into Monday and Tuesday next week. Humidity day by day, we see a steady rebound in the moisture content like we were talking about with that dew point temperatures graphic. As we go into Saturday, that's when we're expecting the peak of the humidity. Still only in this humid box, but we're not really going to see any dew point temperatures that make a climb up into the 70s during this cooler portion of the year. And then they're very quick to drop back down. We start to see impacts of a frontal boundary passing through between Saturday and Sunday. And then the dew point temperatures just completely drop off the map as we go into Monday and Tuesday. So some very dry air is looking to settle in. And that is going to correlate to a pretty lackluster and a pretty uneventful forecast for the beginning of next week. It's going to be the colder air that is more of a talking point. So here's what the long-range models have to say. Right now, fair amount of agreement, I guess you could say, amongst the green and the blue, the GFS and its counterpart, the European and blue. You can see that the rain mainly moving in during that overnight time period between Friday and into early Saturday morning. We go ahead and go into 8 a.m., still our fair share of widely scattered showers. And then as we transition into lunchtime, those rain chances are scattering out and tapering off. So it looks like the frontal boundary is beginning its passage through as we head into the second half of your Saturday. And it's really just a couple of spotty showers that are going to hang around in the picture as we go into Saturday evening and Saturday night. That will be the story as we go into Sunday. Still not seeing anything really widespread in the way of rain chances, but just kind of flicking the paintbrush in terms of the blue and the green colors. That is creating maybe a couple of sprinkles, maybe even a pocket of some steady rain at times as we head into the very last day of your weekend on Sunday afternoon. Still looks like a pretty great forecast for some outdoor plans, maybe some passing cloud cover here and there. The main message that I want to give you is the bulk of the rain that you will see is going to be in the first part of your Saturday morning into the early afternoon time frame. Then after that, it's going to be kind of a story of on again and off again rain. So you will have off periods, you will have dry times throughout this weekend that you can get your outdoor plans in. I really don't think it's going to be a washout whatsoever, but maybe the bulk of the rain could contribute to some fair chances at maybe totaling around an inch of rain in some spots. We'll go over what both these models are saying for those anticipated rainfall totals in a moment. But going into Monday morning, cloud cover pushes out. We do see some wraparound moisture that the European says, hey, there could be a couple of showers as we go into Monday afternoon, into the evening hours up in the mountains. When we're talking about the temperatures that are settling in, this could actually be in the form of some form of a wintry mix, maybe even getting into some winter weather. None of that's going to happen here in central Georgia, so do not get your hopes up about that. But the good news is we head into Veterans Day, still nice and dry. Going into Wednesday afternoon, still once again, an uneventful stretch of weather looks to settle in. I said that the bigger story is going to be the cooler temperatures. But before we get into that, the first thing that we'll tackle is the rainfall totals. So you will see the GFS model right here. So that was that green color model that you just saw. It's indicating that rain is going to start to move in sometime around Saturday, right at the midnight hour. And then as we flash forward throughout the entire weekend, only totals of about 1/10 to maybe even 3/10 of an inch of rain. It actually has most of the higher rainfall totals farther down to the south in central Georgia. Now, don't really want to pick apart about which areas need rain and which areas don't, because we all definitely do need some rain. But it would be maybe kind of substantial to see some totals like this. It would at least probably prevent the drought conditions from worsening that have settled in. But let's go into the European, because it's a bit of a higher resolution model, so we can pick apart some localized areas rainfall totals a bit better on this model as opposed to the GFS. It has rain chances moving in as early as Friday evening. Now, I don't really see that happening. The graph model we typically like to use as our main guidance because it's a higher resolution model, it's a short-term model, it has less room for error than these long-range models do. But if we go the European route, we start to see trends a little bit earlier in the day on Friday. You should plan on at least some rain moving in as we go into those evening time plans, maybe the nighttime plans on Friday, may pertain to football Friday night. If any of you still have some regular season games to play, I know the playoffs are going to get going as of next weekend. So hopefully this is very opportune timing. You have a bye week this week in between your first round game, and you won't have to worry about this rain interrupting any of your Friday night plans. But as we flash forward throughout the entire weekend, some spots of that gray color. So remember, we can use this legend as a bit of a guide up here at the top. Those gray colors going to indicate totals around 1 inch of rainfall. And some of those are present over central Georgia. Once again, seeing better coverage of it farther down to the south, but some patches of it farther up to the north. And some of these rainfall totals a bit closer to the half-inch mark for rainfall. I don't expect maybe that much rain. It just depends on what Future View is saying about how widely scattered those showers are going to be as we head into your Saturday morning. I really don't think much in the way of rainfall is going to add to these totals as we go into the second half of Saturday and into most of your Sunday. But we'll continue to get a better idea right now. We're right on the line as of right now in terms of when we can really get a good view and when we can finally get a better picture of what's going on as we head towards the weekend. Those short-range models are going to give us a much better idea of what's going to occur. But as of right now, just plan on Saturday, the first half of the day, being your kind of dreary and your gloomy forecast, because your morning low temperatures, like we mentioned, Saturday and Sunday, in the mid to upper 50s as it currently stands. I could see these numbers dropping down a little bit, but the main messaging is they're above average by nearly 10 degrees of your average low of 45. But you see that drop off into Monday. Take a look at how cool this air is that settles in for the beginning of next week. A 20-degree drop-off between your morning lows Sunday into your morning lows on Monday. 36, that's already one of the coolest morning low temperatures I've forecasted so far in the fall season. Well, we take it a step farther. Tuesday on Veterans Day morning, a low temperature of 30 degrees. So yesterday we were talking about how that might be on the line of freezing temperature. We actually have some models that are predicting some upper 20s to welcome you out the door on Tuesday. Even one model that got as low as 27 degrees. So now that we're seeing more models agree with one another that we are going to see some sub-freezing temperatures as you walk outside on Tuesday, we're gaining more confidence in a possible freeze warning being issued. So what specifically does that mean? It is issued when significant widespread freezing temperatures are expected. So we're not just talking about your Dublins and your Eastmans that typically go a couple degrees lower than the rest of the bunch. We're actually talking about most of central Georgia, seeing those numbers get down to 32 degrees or even below 32 degrees. So that's what you see right here, less than or equal to 32 degrees. This is going to be for areas still in the growing season, and here's a bit of a news flash for you all. We're all still at the end of the fall growing season. It's once we get into November 20th or we see each county's hard freeze. That's going to be 28 degrees or colder. Whichever one of those comes first, that's when those frost and freeze alerts will go away, because we're entering a time of the year where they're going to happen more frequently. And when you start to just issue them every time you get below freezing temperature, you're going to have those issued more than likely a couple times each and every week, as once we get into winter, we know those freezing temperatures are going to become the normal as you walk outside. but this is a bit premature, it does seem like. We're still in the first couple days of November. By the time we get into this time frame we're talking about for the potential freeze warning, it will be on Veterans Day, which is November 11th. Take a look at this. Your first freeze dates in the Macon area. The earliest freeze we've ever had actually came on October 14th back in 1988. So that would be nearly a month ago in time. Think about that. We would already have hit the 32-degree mark. The latest freeze we've ever seen, that actually happened on December 26th, so one day after Christmas back in 1918. But on average, the first time that we hit that freezing temperature, November 11th all time. Remember what I just said? November 11th, Veterans Day. Next week, it looks like we are right on schedule for our first freeze as we go into the beginning of next week. So it's not atypical to necessarily see some temperatures this low, this early in the, well, I guess this late in the fall season, but this much before we actually settle into winter. So some safety tips that you can go ahead and make some plans to exercise as we go into the beginning of next week. First and foremost, dress warm when spending time outdoors. Many of you are going to be waking up right around that time that we hit that morning low temperature in between 6 and 7 a.m. And make sure to bring in your outdoor pets. If you have dogs that like to just roam around the yard all day, soak up some sun, you'll want to bring them inside, because if it's too cold for yourself outside, it is definitely too cold for your furry friends. Even though they have a little bit of extra insulation compared to us, I promise you they will appreciate it if you bring them indoors. Also, outdoor hoses and faucets along with some exposed pipes, that's where the freezing temperature can be very vulnerable. So what you want to do is drain and disconnect any of those hoses and faucets that you have outside. That means even after you turn the water off with the sprinkler spigot that is connected to the hose, make sure that you're pressing the nozzle, draining out all the water that you can that is still lingering in the hose, because of course that can cause some cracking and that could cause a reason for you to go out to Lowe's and buy a new water hose instead of just utilizing the one that you already have and saving some money. You'll want to wrap exposed pipes in some form of insulation. Now what that means is not just outdoor exposed pipes, it's not just those sprinkler spigots, it's also anything that's in a non-heated room. Say you have some form of a water hose or exposed pipe in your garage. That's not necessarily a well-heated room or a well-insulated room, so you're going to want to continue to just wrap those for that time period. Overnight Wednesday into Tuesday morning, then I do believe your temperature should at least get back above freezing temperature. But right now, this is still a couple days out in advance. These are just some things that you might want to keep in mind. Also, your plants. So it's the 4 Ps that we always refer to when it comes to this freeze warning and these first freeze tips. It's people, it's pets, it's plants, and it's pipes. So going on to the plants category, water those plants before freezing temperature occurs. So make plans to water those plants in the evening hours as you go into Monday night perhaps. Because once you start to water them, say you go out the door on Tuesday morning, you try to water them, that water could very well freeze over on top of the plants, and that could be very detrimental in terms of killing them. So also covering sensitive crops and plants. So if you just have some flower pots and maybe some form of a flower that doesn't necessarily combat cooler temperatures well, and along with that crops, like I mentioned, we're still in the tail end of the fall growing season. You'll want to cover those in some form of a tarp, maybe some form of an insulated net, whatever you can find to get your hands on, because now when we start to have this first freeze, it can result in you having to harvest some of those crops a little bit premature. So hopefully you just take the right measures during this little bit of window where temperatures will be vulnerable to all those crops and plants, and then we will start to see the temperatures warm back up. So now talking about your tropics outlook, not much going on. In fact, absolutely nothing going on. No activity still expected within the next 7 days. I know this has been a boring graphic to look at as of recently, but it is something we will continue to show you until we reach the end of hurricane season, which will be on November 30th. And a quick look at your frequency graphic, because once we hit that official peak, which happens on September 10th, you see right there, once we go closer and closer, November 10th, that's going to be next Monday. So that's another line right here that we can see at the bottom. This is how much activity that we should see. So we're really seeing a drastic decrease in tropical activity. It's not impossible to see storms try to form this late in the hurricane season. In fact, I do believe we had 1 or 2 that did try to form as of last November. But so far, this year hasn't quite lived up to all the numbers and the frequency that we did see with tropical systems as of last year. but we will continue to keep a close eye on it because Mother Nature has a fun way of kind of playing jokes on you. When you're not paying attention to something, it will give you a reason to pay attention to it. So now let's go into your 7-day forecast, which will continue to be highlighted by plenty of above average high temperatures. If we have any day that's going to flirt with the 80-degree mark, I would anticipate that on Saturday. And you may say, Alex, you were just talking about rain chances for the first half of the day. Well, it's going to be scattered rain. It's going to be scattered cloud cover. We're still going to have breaks in it that allow for some sunshine to warm your numbers up. And take a look at your morning low temperature. 58 degrees. We don't have as much makeup ground to do, say, with the 37-degree mark that we hit earlier this morning. So not too much of a temperature increase in between that morning low and that afternoon high compared to, say, the 40-degree spread that we saw early this morning into what we're forecasting this afternoon. 10% chance of rain moving in the late night hours of Friday. You did see the European model say Friday evening had some rain chances. I'm not putting too much stock into that. I still think the overnight time period between Friday into early Saturday morning is when most of your rain begins to move in, and that's when most of your rain is going to fall. After we get past lunchtime on Saturday, I do anticipate the rain to start to scatter out and taper off, and we're only going to be left with a couple of spotty and isolated sprinkles through the remainder of your weekend. But starting to feel the impacts of some cooler air as early as Sunday afternoon. 74, although doesn't feel too much different than, say, 79 that we're forecasted to hit on Saturday afternoon. It's really in between Sunday afternoon into Monday morning. We see a very steep temperature drop off. 36 as you walk out the door on Monday. That's already claiming the title of the coolest air we've seen so far in the fall season, but 54 degrees. We had plenty of upper 50s for high temperatures as of last week. So that last week of October, remember before Halloween, it was a very messy and dreary forecast. We had some cool temperatures paired up with some occasional rain. Well, this 54 is actually paired up with some sunshine. So give you an idea about how strong and how potent that cool air is that's going to be ushered in behind these series of boundaries and these series of fronts that pass through over the course of this weekend. And it's mainly just due to the direction and the origination of this front. It's forming way up into Canada, and that very cool Arctic air that is present up in Canada is going to get pushed down into the eastern half of the United States. As once you get into the Great Plains area, areas farther over to the west like the Rocky Mountains, maybe portions of Colorado, western Oklahoma, western Texas, probably not going to see the implications of this frontal boundary as much as we are going to see it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some numbers that are cooler over here in, say, central Georgia, North Georgia, up into Tennessee, and over there in the Rocky Mountains as we go into the beginning of next week. 30 degrees for a morning low temperature on Tuesday. Like I said, some models are calling for upper 20s. We're seeing more and more models come into agreement that the numbers will be below that magic number of 32 degrees. So you're very likely to see us here on the weather team issue a weather impact alert for that first part of Tuesday morning, really overnight Monday into early Tuesday morning. That's nothing to fret about. It's just going to be a day that we want you to pay extra special close attention to, take all those proper precautions that I was just referring to, and then after that, we'll warm up into a nice and warm 57-degree mark for the afternoon. Once again, going to be a chilly afternoon for any Veterans Day plans that you do have, but go ahead and prep the winter coat. Something you may have gotten away with not necessarily using over the last couple of weeks. It is looking more and more likely that we have that first freeze underway as we head into next Tuesday, and it makes me pretty confident not only just seeing a couple models dip well below 32 degrees, but also the fact that Tuesday is going to be right on par with when we averagely see that first freeze date. November 11th, remember that was the magic date, so we are running according to schedule. Something else that we'll be talking about tomorrow, it's Wednesday today, we get the release of our drought monitor every Thursday morning, sometime between 8 and 9 a.m. So we'll get an update to all these values that you do see here. I guess not really values, just shaded areas indicating what kind of drought conditions that we do have. Most of central Georgia is still in this category for a moderate drought. As of right now, that's where you can start to take some precautions, but it's really once we get into severe, extreme, and exceptional territory, which some areas of central Georgia, the farther west, southwest, or east that you live, are already under at least a severe drought, and this pocket of an extreme drought down to the southwest and up to the northwest of us. We'll be looking out to see if those areas expand over us, and then we're going to have to start taking these a bit more seriously than we have been with abnormally dry conditions and moderate drought conditions. Hopefully we keep the extreme and exceptional drought out of here, but we'll bring you the latest tomorrow at 11 a.m. So thanks for tuning in. Once again, we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll be back on Friday, 11 a.m. each and every day, giving you an in-depth look at your forecast ahead.